everybody, and welcome to A Little Something Extra with me, Nancy Gianni, and my daughter.
GiGi and Franco too.
And
Thanks for the warm welcoming, Gigi. Why are you always so unenthusiastic about me joining this show? It's as soon as I came on as executive producer that actually joins the show sometimes. It's like I stole your spotlight.
well, what she's trying to tell you is that your name is not on the sign.
Well, maybe we should put it on the sign so I can actually get a warm welcoming from you.
So A Little Something Extra is not just a podcast, it's a video podcast. So make sure that you tune in to see us, not only hear us, but see us, because that's part of the fun.
Yes, we are both audio and video, so make sure that you go to YouTube and go to the Gigi's Playhouse channel where you can find all of our video podcast episodes in our library.
Awesome. Yes. This episode, we are joined by an incredible guest who is changing the life for individuals with Down syndrome. He is helping them stay healthy. He is taking care of them from their adolescence all the way through their adulthood, isn't he, Gigi?
Yes.
And I wonder how they're all staying healthy. How do we stay healthy?
We do a gout,
We work out. Yep.
and I do low sugar and low carbs.
And a low sugar, low carb diet. So that helps us stay healthy, right?
Right.
So we like to work out as a family. We like to work out all the time. And sometimes we like to cheat on our diets a little bit. We do. But that makes us happy. So a healthy lifestyle also means you need to be happy. And sometimes you have to cheat to be happy.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So why don't we get into our Generation G moment with Franco Gianni?
So, all month long, as you know, it's Down Syndrome Awareness Month, or as we like to call Down Syndrome Acceptance Month. So, I'm going to keep plugging this incredible campaign that we have going on. So, what we want everyone to be doing around the whole world is joining us in taking the Generation G pledge. So in order to do that, you go to iacceptyou.org, and there'll be an option to take the pledge. So you'll take the pledge, and what that means is that you're promising to be accepting, generous, and kind every single day to everyone that is out there, regardless of diagnosis, race, sexual orientation, gender, skin color, anything. So that is what we want. We want everyone out there supporting one another and accepting and loving our differences in one another. So what does that mean to take the pledge? So you take the pledge, you start living that lifestyle, but then how are we going to spread the word? Well, the website has all the tools that you might need in order to actually spread it, whether you want to spread it on social media, whether you want to spread it in your community, whether you want to spread it at work, whether you want to spread it at your school. We have all the resources so you could bring this amazing campaign and this amazing cause into these places in order to spread the message to create a more accepting world for all. So this Gen G moment is me telling you all out there to live that Gen G lifestyle so we can then find more people to then spotlight for this show for these Gen G moments, because we love seeing all the change that you all make in this world.
How
about
is
that?
awesome. That was like, did you see me? I was like just frozen. So that was a drop the mic moment because I was speechless. And iacceptyou.org is just an amazing place to stop and learn. You will be given every kind of tool you need to spread love and acceptance around the world, not only in your communities or your churches or your schools, but in your business.
We have a pretty spectacular guest today. I want to introduce Dr. Brian Shercoin. He is the medical director of the Adult Down Syndrome Center in Park Ridge, Illinois. He is the co-founder of this center, which serves and documents the health and psychosocial needs of over 6,000 teens and adults with Down syndrome since its founding in 1992. So he's been doing this about 30 years now. He's also the co-author of 2 books, Mental Wellness of Adults with Down Syndrome and The Guide to Good Health for Teens with Down Syndrome. So let's give a warm welcoming for Dr. Brian Shercoin.
Thank you so much for having me today. I sure appreciate you inviting me to be here today.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? So when Gigi was born, so she was born in 2002. You had been open almost 10 years. You guys opened 1992, the Adult Down Syndrome Clinic?
Correct.
So almost 10 years. And even though she was just my beautiful little baby, I didn't know what her whole life was going to be, but I knew that there was this place for her when she was older. And I have to tell you, what a gift from God to be able to know that we have something like that we have a resource like that right here in Chicago. I mean, I know you serve people from all over, but I just have to tell you, as a parent, I'm just so beyond grateful for everything that you have done for you as a person to open up your heart specifically to Down syndrome. there's many paths that all of us can take for any different reason. And I'm just really excited to talk more about that, what led you on this journey. You are not only a doctor, you're an author, you're a marathon runner. I remember that when you were doing the Chicago marathons. Don't know if you're still doing that, but that was awesome. Doing so much, brother. And I'm just so grateful that you're here today. And I know Gigi has a question she wants to ask you.
I do.
She does. So look right at him and ask him.
I have Down syndrome. What does that mean?
So what does that mean? So we were thinking this might be a great time for our viewers to understand a little bit more about Down syndrome, and for Gigi.
Yeah.
Okay, Down syndrome is a condition in which individuals are born with an extra chromosome, extra 21st chromosome, and then because of that, there are some certain conditions or symptoms that tend to be more common. But what that means, just what that means by itself, there's a lot we don't know, and a lot how people can learn and how people can participate in activities and people can be healthy is something that is something we're continuing to learn about, and we want to encourage people with Down syndrome to live the healthiest life that they can.
Awesome.
When and it's related to what he was talking about, because there's so much we don't know. Would you say that like Down syndrome is kind of, I don't want to necessarily say a spectrum, but like there's so much potential that there's not even like a ceiling on it. Like it all depends on the way
Individual
that
and
the health
what they're exposed to.
Exactly, exposure and the resources that they have and the way that they feed and work their bodies. I mean, would you say that it's kind of like an open book?
So, I think that, I think we get asked, oftentimes by families that are, prenatal, get asked questions, what's my son or daughter going to be like? And I say, the only really piece of information we know for sure at the moment that you've shared with me is that the preborn baby has an extra chromosome. What that's going to mean and how that person's going to be, there's a lot of factors that are going to go into that ultimately, and how what the health of that individual is going to be. So there's a lot of there's clearly a genetics piece, but there's also a lot of other factors that go into that. So I think the genetics piece at this point we can't alter, but I think that we can do everything we can to optimize, and I think we probably have not seen at this point. Let me phrase it in a different way. I think we are continuing to see on a regular basis people with Down syndrome doing things that we never thought that they could do before. Yeah. And so, is there a ceiling? I haven't seen it yet. And it just keeps, the world keeps expanding. And I think there's several issues with that. I think, the aspect that we contribute to or have interest in it is the health issue, but there's the education issue. There's so many other issues that go into that. And then there's, it maybe doesn't get as recognized as much. There's the expectation issue, and whether the person is, suppressed in their ability to advance because we have no expectations for them. And I think that's a huge
one too, Brian. Like, are they able to thrive? Are they in an environment where they can thrive? Do people think they can thrive? I think that's right. Such a big piece. And me as do people believe in them? That's right. Such a big piece.
How long have you worked with people with Down syndrome?
The clinic opened in 1992, but when I was a resident in the mid-1980s, I took care of some people with Down syndrome in my practice in our residency. And then in the late 80s, when I was in practice, I took care of a number of people with Down syndrome when I was practicing in a smaller community in the northwest corner of Illinois.
What was the catalyst for change? What made you say, wait, this is the population I want to work with?
So I actually had a great uncle that had Down syndrome, although that's not what they called it. And he was born in 1907. But really the driving force was when I went to in practice in northwest corner of Illinois, Freeport. I 2 16-bed residential facilities opened for adults, and I became their medical director, and I cared for those 32 individuals. Many, but not all of them, had Down syndrome. And then when I came back to join the faculty of the residency, family medicine residency here at Lutheran General in 1991, that was about the time the National Association for Down Syndrome, which was our local parent group, one of the local parent groups, asked the hospital to start a clinic for adults with Down syndrome. And it ended up on the chairman of family medicine's desk, if you will. And I was the newest faculty member with the least on my plate, but also the most interested in doing for it. So, I think it was, it was meant to be.
Wow.
And so, we took it on and we started 2 mornings a month and it just took off.
That's great.
And, now it's very full time. We've seen over 6,000 adolescents and adults with Down syndrome. We have about 7,000 patient encounters a year.
That's awesome. That's amazing. How much has it changed over those 30 years? Like, what have the changes in the people you saw back then to now, and what advancements, what have you seen, what's changing?
I don't know how long this podcast is, but there's a lot.
Good. Well, that's good news.
To try to, drum it down into 2 or 3 things. I'd say the first thing is there's so much more we know about caring for people with Down syndrome than we knew then.
Yeah.
Honestly, we knew. I joke that I got 5 minutes of training in caring for adults with Down syndrome in medical school, and that's a 5-minute exaggeration. Honestly, I can't remember anyone ever talking about Down syndrome adults with Down syndrome in medical school.
That's crazy.
And so when we started the clinic, we went to the literature to find things, and there was very little, and I would say at least half of it was wrong. And so, I think that, so just how much we know compared to then is huge. I think the constant in all that, though, I think the interest in learning and the willingness to listen to families and people with Down syndrome has been, the driving, one of the driving forces behind the clinic from the start, and it continues to be. And so really, we're so grateful that families and people with Down syndrome were willing to teach us.
Yeah.
And we learned so much. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is that, really when we started the clinic, healthcare was something we did for people with Down syndrome. And I think that we really have shifted over the years that really try to make it something that we do with people with Down syndrome or support them in doing it for themselves.
That's awesome.
And I think that's, a huge piece of what we're trying to do now. Clearly there are some individuals, unfortunately, that, really cannot have a huge participation in their own healthcare. But I think for most, it's not a question of if, it's a question of how, we can support them in doing, what they need to do to be healthy. So, I think that those are probably, the 2 biggest issues. Certainly, when I graduated from medical school, the life expectancy in 1984, the life expectancy of people with Down syndrome was only 28. And so now it's about 60. And so, that would be clearly the third big piece.
Right.
And so, really there was not a large adult population back in the 70s and early 80s. And now there is, thankfully. And so now there's not only responsibility, but opportunity to learn on how we can help people live healthier lives.
That's so awesome. So interesting. What would you tell a family today? Like, what kind of advice would you give a family at different levels? So what would, for a baby, what would you say? And then what would you say for an adolescent?
Yeah, this is certainly not my, I can't take credit for this, but I love the concept of, the child is a baby first, and not Down syndrome first. I think that's, we talk about person first language, and I think that's not just a language issue. I think that's a philosophy, and I think that's really important. I think, I love again, I can't take credit for it, but I love the phrase, take your child home and love them, which I think, obviously there's a lot more to it than that, but, I clearly, my guess is that's not the message my great-great-grandmother got.
Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine back then.
100 plus years ago. The fact that they took Leo home at all was pretty amazing. But,
right.
So I'm sure that's not the message they got. So I think that, I think that's the main thing. And I think, I think the other thing is let your child be a child. I think then would be the next step. I think, the therapies are important and all those things are important, but, kids need to have fun and we need to help them let them be children. I love the families that say, we really just tried to treat them like any of the other kids.
Yes.
obviously each, whether they have Down syndrome or not, each child is unique. So that, you have to approach each child a little differently no matter who they are. But,
Right.
I think that there's a lot of a lot of truth to that and a lot of importance in that. And I think as people become, more capable of taking care of themselves, is trying to foster that as much as possible.
Yeah.
And really helping people be, our folks be, people with Down syndrome be the leaders in their own healthcare as much as they possibly can.
More independent than that. I love that, and I agree with that 150%. I remember one thing that you said when Gigi was little that really stuck with me. I can't remember, you were speaking somewhere, it might have been at one of the NDSC conferences, or actually I think you were speaking at Gigi's this time. We were talking, and somebody had asked, what is the most important therapy I should give my baby? Gigi was little at that time, and hopefully your answer is still the same. I'll tell you what you said back then, and we'll see, or what I remember. You said that speech therapy was the number one, that physical therapy you were going to be getting, that you guys were still going to go to the park and you would be moving their muscles and moving their bodies, but that speech was such an important piece. And I tell this to people every single day at our playhouses everywhere, that I think it's such an important piece because it's the most complex. And there's so much more that goes into that. Is that something you still feel today? I just remember you saying that, and it has stuck with me. I continue to tell people that to this day, a new parent would come in, that would be my first thing that I would talk to them about. I talked to them about when you were here and some of the things that you told us. So that's what I wonder if you even realize too, is that the mentor, the teacher in you, that when you talk to us as parents, okay, Dr. Chicoine said it, so that's the way it is, and we're passing that on. And you've just been such a tremendous gift in that way. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that. But is it still speech therapy? Is that what you would say to the younger parents?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, I would maybe modify it to say communication therapy, because we do have some folks that unfortunately just are not going to be able to speak for, whatever reason.
Yeah.
So communication therapy, I think we're clearly social beings, and we are learning so much about, even in elderly people with or without Down syndrome, that the impact of not being able to hear and not being able to communicate with people, how that impacts us in so many ways. And I'll never forget when I was a kid, one of my classmates' father, one of my classmates was in those days, they were eye, ear, nose, and throat doctors.
Oh, really?
And that goes back a ways. And I'll never forget, it stuck with me all these years. He said, when he asked his patients if you had a choice of being blind or deaf, he said his patients would say, being blind or being deaf is more challenging because it really does impact the ability to be social with other people. And so again, I think the speech and hearing are so important. I mean, not that vision is not important, and certainly people find their way around all sorts of challenges.
Right.
But I think that one is one. Again, that was in the 1960s, so the ability to work around that was a little different. But I think that's such an important thing that that being able to communicate and participate in life, and even just from a healthcare standpoint, be able to share your symptoms and
100%.
Express what is hurting or bothering you is so important.
So important.
And folks that can't do that certainly make. And not that this is all about me, but it certainly makes my day more challenging for those that can't, to try to, to sort through what are the issues.
Well, yeah, I remember like when Gigi started school and she would come home and, she would have a scratch or a mark on her and just look at me and cry and tell, but she couldn't tell me how it happened. And there's no, like the most hopeless or helpless feeling is knowing that there is pain or somebody hurt her and that she couldn't communicate it to me. So, speech to me and communication, I like that you call it communication therapy, because I do feel like a new parent of a 3-month-old doesn't speech. They don't start talking until later. She doesn't need that, or he doesn't need that now. Well, no, it's communication skills, and communication begins at birth with them getting their needs out. They're going to cry when they, eye contact. There's so many different ways to communicate. I really like that idea of calling communication therapy as opposed to just speech therapy.
Yeah, and I to think back with Dr. Butler, I can still see him saying it. But anyway, what he's said way back then is, I think the key now is that we do have ways to work around some of these things. And so, communication therapy is so important in so many, whatever that means, whether it's speech or whatever. But whatever way we can help people communicate is so important.
Oh yeah.
And one of the questions that I have, it definitely is when it comes to, even when we're doing like LMNOP, when we're teaching the little 5-month-olds how to do sign language and things like that. But when it comes to adults that might be, either nonverbal or have trouble with speech, is there ways to be able to still develop, at least that you might know of, in ways to be able to develop their speech and their ability to be able to communicate, or is it more difficult at that point?
Well, I think that the challenge with trying to help people with adults improve their speech. Well, let me go back. Yes, we've seen adults improve their speech, so it is possible. The challenge is to say that it's been done on a large population. Unfortunately, it's very hard to find, first off, speech therapists that will, have the skill to work with adults, and secondly, find insurance providers that will pay for it. So I don't think we really have a large population of individuals, adults that have gotten it. And certainly that's the beauty of a place like GiGi's that provides that service. But I think on a whole, there just really has not been that much opportunity for adults to improve their speech. But I do think you clearly see adults with Down syndrome that can improve their speech.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. We've definitely seen it.
And if they can't improve their speech, certainly the ability to improve their communication. We're big proponents of visual aids of whatever that means. I carry my phone around with me all day long, and I'm looking at it. I'm constantly having visual reminders and visual assistance with my day. And I think we see a lot of our folks our patients that are people with Down syndrome that that was used when they're children, but it's not used when they're adults. Because they've outgrown it. Is sort of the sense. But our sense is that none of us really outgrow it. Whether you have Down syndrome or not, it's such an important piece to help us get through our day, and so we really do see a lot of people be able to, even if they can't express themselves, at least be able to understand what people are trying to share with them visually is so important.
So important.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. That's how we do a lot of the teaching here at GiGi's. I mean, it's all
very visual. We've
learned that individuals with Down syndrome are very visual learners. So yeah, it's definitely a big component for sure.
Do you only help adults, or do you help the kids too?
So we start at age 12. So so I don't know if a 12-year-old would consider themselves a kid, but
at least
but their mom would.
They don't. Their mom, yeah.
We don't see the real little ones. That those needs are different. They're pretty different than what we do. So at times people ask, well, why don't you just see them? Your family physician, why don't you see them from birth to adult? Those needs are significantly different than what we provide. So we don't see the real little ones, but we start at 12.
Oh, that's great. I was thinking it was 14, but that's awesome because I have people who ask, and there is commonalities between our kids and things that a regular family physician might not know. So that's great to know at 12 years old. I'll make sure we get that out there to our families because that's pretty amazing. How many families have you served? You guys have served, I mean, isn't it like 6,000 families or something? We've served over 6,000 adolescents and adults with Down syndrome over the years. That's awesome.
What is your favorite part about Down syndrome?
Well, that's a very easy answer, and that's the people with Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. Each individual with Down syndrome is unique and is their own personal self. So, yes, there are some commonalities, but as soon as you get too focused on the commonalities, you miss the uniqueness of each individual. So I think that I would say probably my most favorite aspect is that everyone is unique.
Good answer.
My favorite parts about Down syndrome is the empathy that every single individual with Down syndrome has. I feel like that's just such a huge characteristic of Down syndrome is their ability to love unconditionally. And I bring that up because I was reading, I think it was a blog that you might have wrote or some article that you talked about the empathy radar.
Right.
Can you touch on that a little bit? Can you touch on the on what that is a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to. Dr. McGuire, our former social worker, and I have talked a lot about this over the course of time. And he tells the story, and I take a moment or two, so forgive me if it goes on too long. But the parents, the mom and dad, and the young person with Down syndrome, the student, were at a parent-teacher student night, and they're meeting with the teacher, and as it goes on, the student, the young person with Down syndrome, says suddenly to the teacher, "Are you okay?" the parents are like, well, he's really not kind of getting the purpose of this evening.
Yeah.
They're kind of a little embarrassed. He's kind of missing the boat. And the teacher starts to cry. And then they're, oh boy, now we're really embarrassed. Now what has he done? And I may not remember all the details exactly right, but the gist of the story is that the teacher said, my good friend at home, she lived someplace else when she was a child. My good friend from home passed away this week, and I was as soon as this is over, I'm getting on a plane to fly home to the funeral, and I haven't told anyone because I didn't think there was any way in the world I would get through these series of interactions this evening. And but your son, honestly, I can't remember the story, it's son or daughter, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Your son, picked up on that and asked me how I was doing, and the whole rest of the conference, if you will, was to discuss his sense of feelings, his sense of getting in touch with other people's feelings as well. So we labeled that empathy radar. That again, it's a generality and everyone's unique, but it's a pretty common generality that many people with Down syndrome really are in touch with other people's feelings. So frequently people will say, Aunt Jenny is sick, or Grandma's ill, or whatever, but we haven't told them because we're trying to save his feelings. I said, you may as well tell him because
he's gonna know.
He pretty much knows it.
He probably already knows. Yeah.
Even if you've been talking on the phone 3 rooms away, he's probably heard you. But if not, he's he's picked up on your feelings. So he may not know the specifics, but he knows that something's not right.
Up. So. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I just love that when I saw that because, I've been very exposed, over the course of the last 17 years and then over the course of just working at GiGi's too, and especially working with adults with Down syndrome in Hugs and Mugs. And it's just something that I've always noticed that if either something was up with me or there was just someone there, they were immediately just receptive to that.
Yeah.
And just wanting to move in and making sure that in some way they can brighten your day. If they knew something was upsetting you, or if they knew something was wrong, right. And like you said, it's a generalization, but at the same time, it's common. So I really
absolutely
responded to that.
That's I think we all feel that with most.
Gigi is a pro at it. I know that.
What do you know? What's some of the stuff? I know, Franco, I don't know that you've been to the Adult Down Syndrome Clinic. It's awesome. Can you talk to us a little bit about it, about the resources, what goes on over there, and fill us in.
Sure. So it's certainly the clinic has grown and evolved over time, and the building we have now really does allow us to do a lot more things. So if you walk in, the first glance is it looks like a little house on the outside, but on the inside, a lot of it looks like a physician's office. We have exam rooms and that kind of stuff, and typical healthcare kind of things happen here. We do take histories and do physical exams and give immunizations and that kind of stuff. And so that part, but the other piece is that we really, we really understand the interaction between mental and physical health. That's not unique to people with Down syndrome. That's true for all of us, but it's certainly we think it's probably a more important issue in people with Down syndrome. Some of it, to go back to the concept we talked about, the speech therapy and the challenges of not being able to speak. We do see that does create physical pain or social pain or whatever when people can't express it. Does sometimes get expressed with behavioral changes or psychological changes. So it really does. Really kind of looking at the whole person. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about the generosity of Mike and Linda Mussallem. We've been out without a psychologist for a while, and this is part of what they've done is allow. We're looking. We haven't found one yet, but we're looking to hire a psychologist because we know that that's such an important piece of what we do to be able to provide that multidisciplinary. Again, I can tell you literally thousands of stories that people presented with the behavioral change that ended up, if you just put on the psychiatric hat, you might have treated with medications, but really it was thyroid or sleep apnea or an ingrown toenail, or,
right.
So many things that that you want to make sure you're addressing. And so really diving in and looking to see, how that's all related. And then the other piece, we're very fortunate, again, through philanthropy, a number of years ago, a family in their will left us some funds that allowed us to hire Dr. Katie Frank, who's an occupational therapist. And so, in a way, I kind of look at it as in my simple mind, a three-legged stool with medical, physical, mental, and then functional.
Sure.
And so Dr. Frank really does help us, whether the person has a physical issue or a mental health issue or whatever, a decrease in function is a common component of that. And so really, getting people back on their feet, so to speak, is so important. And she does so much of that for our patients.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, really is the multidisciplinary piece. Frankly, as a family physician, I think that this would be nice in every family physician's
right.
office,
I was thinking the same thing.
Because these problems are not unique to people with Down syndrome, but there are unique twists, certainly in our patients that we have become familiar with over time. I learn something new every day, though, so I certainly don't pretend that I have all the answers. So.
What about now? And hearing you talk about hiring that psychologist, I'm wondering through COVID and what your patients are coming back to you now, and how you weathered that storm and continue to weather that storm.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's huge negative things going on with COVID, and I don't need to, you all know those. I think some of the upside to COVID has been the opportunity to do telehealth,
Sure.
particularly around the mental. It's obviously very difficult to do a physical exam through a Zoom visit, but certainly with mental health, I think it's really been a real plus for us, and I really do hope that it'll continue going forward. So I can see people more regularly, people that come, hundreds of miles. I can see them.
That's awesome.
Regularly on via Zoom or whatever, and stay in touch with them. I think that's and being able to see it's much better than a phone call because I can see I'm as visual as my patients and
right.
as other patients.
I am too.
I'm a visual person. So to be able to see them, is so meaningful to me, and what we're trying to do. So I think that, I think that's been an issue, been a huge plus. I think, honestly, I have been both pleasantly surprised and appreciative of the resiliency of families and individuals with Down syndrome who have gotten through this. Many of them doing better during the pandemic than they were before the pandemic, from both a physical health and mental health standpoint. But that's certainly not to negate the challenges that this has been for
Sure.
a lot of individuals, and certainly some of the mental health issues that have arisen as part of this. And the physical, like the rest of us, trying to not spend all our time in the kitchen.
Eating, right.
So, that's certainly been an issue for individuals with Down syndrome and their families as well. So, yeah, but again, it's not all bad news. I think some families have patients that really got very involved in exercise programs and healthy eating and have lost a lot of weight. And we've had, individuals that have done great with Zoom meetings and things like that, and really connected with other people and connected with people around the world that they never would have connected with
Yes.
prior. And some of the groups that we do here, the Dr. Frank and Laura are doing here, prior to the pandemic, it was local people that were coming to that. But this has allowed people from much farther away, even other countries, to participate. So, so I think we've learned a lot, and I think we have a lot more to learn going forward on how we can take these lessons we've learned and use them in a positive way.
Where does that early aging issues? Is there a point when it starts to escalate, or is it just a slow? Is it moving slower and you just don't notice it until they're older?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think it's probably early on, but at least in our, this is just very rough. This is not scientific. This is just sort of a description of observation. Particularly before 35 or 40, many people with Down syndrome, in some ways, actually seem to look younger than their chronological age.
Yeah.
But as people get older, 35 and 40, the aging process does seem to, at least to the eye and to the associated health issues, does seem to accelerate.
Mm-hmm. I did see that.
So when it comes to your clinic, Adult Down Syndrome Clinic, and so are there a lot of other similar clinics and centers around the country to yours, or would you say yours is more unique in the resources that you provide for individuals?
That is a wonderful question.
It
so
is.
let me try to tackle all that. There's a lot of pieces to that question. So first off, I think that there are not a lot of clinics for adults with Down syndrome. When we started in '92, there was a lot of excitement. This is great. Soon we'll have a clinic like this in every state of the union. And I think there's 6 or 8 at this point. So at this rate, by the year 2300 or something, we should have one in every state of the union. I think certainly one of the issues is the cost. There's no question.
Yeah.
And again, as I mentioned, we are significantly need philanthropic support, and certainly the Mussallem's gift is a huge a gift, literally a gift for us. So that's that's so beneficial. A study just in the last year or so estimated that about 5% of people with Down syndrome across the United States have access to a clinic, or are able to get care at a clinic. So it's for people with Down syndrome. So it's a pretty tiny percentage.
Wow.
And that really does, and that's really where Mike and I we interacted, certainly as he had mentioned, with his brother George. But that's where Mike and I really intersected. So how do we didn't have those numbers, but the sense was, how do we get people with Down syndrome who don't have access to a clinic the same level of care? And I do come with a little bit of unique perspective, I think, than most of the other folks running clinics, is that I did practice in a small town. I was a family physician in not a small town, but a smaller town.
We love Freeport.
Freeport?
We love
Yeah.
we do, the Freeport pretzels.
Yeah.
We love
Freeport pretzels, that's right.
Yep.
That's, for those of you that don't know, that's the high school
Yep.
mascot, or nickname. And that's because there used to be pretzel factories in Freeport. That was long ago. And so when I practiced in Freeport, 35 years ago, I did have people with Down syndrome in the practice, and there were problems. I really had no idea what I was doing. And so, and people get tired of hearing me say this, but 35 years ago, I was that physician in a smaller community with no information on how to care for adults with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And so, as we've learned more, and this is really where Mike and I and Linda we intersected with moving in the same direction, and it's kind of gone a lot of different directions over time. But I think we're moving very forward quickly now. So how do you serve that other 95%? I think telehealth has opened up some of that, although there are cross-state licensing issues that are going to make that challenging going forward. But the other way is, how do you get information to the hands of the local providers? I'm kind of as a primary care physician, local care is better care if at all possible. To have people travel hundreds of miles to get care is always adds new wrinkles to it, and expense and everything else. So if you can get people that care locally. So how do we support those individuals with Down syndrome? How do we support those families, and how do we support the providers who are giving that? And so those are the things we're really looking at right now. Certainly our resource library is divided into those 3 audiences, trying to provide information for people with Down syndrome, families or caregivers, and then also providers. But then some of the other things we're working on with the Down syndrome medical interest group and others to really look at how can we develop systems that really provide information to providers so that they can provide that same care in their local community. And those are some of the things we're working on with. So we're developing a series of webinars for providers through the Down syndrome medical interest group. Again, with the philanthropy of Mike and Linda has given me the opportunity to participate in. And then we're also looking at some other things, including something that's called Project Echo, which is something that supports providers. It doesn't have to be just not just physicians, but all sorts of OT, PT, and everything else. Supports them in the care of their individual the people that they're serving. So we're looking at a number of ways that we can get that information. So as Mike mentioned, and as would be evident by the fact that there's still only a handful of clinics, that's a very expensive way to do it. I mean, I think ultimately having a clinic in every state would be wonderful.
Yeah.
but I think in the meantime, I don't anticipate that I'll still be here in 2300. I think we need to see how we can support these individuals with other means, and certainly, with the internet, just as open doors that were never open before.
Yeah. Get creative.
Yeah, exactly. Getting access to those online libraries and things like that. But then at the same time, also, even if they can, like during COVID, when you were able to do those virtual visits and things like that, I mean, that even opens the doors too. So,
Were you seeing patients? Were you also seeing patients, obviously safely, but you had patients during COVID, right? There was other things going on in the world, so you probably still had to practice.
Yeah, we had not only, probably the other very unique aspect of our clinic, I'm not sure any other clinic does it, is we do our own inpatient care as well.
Right.
So we, during COVID, a lot of details I don't need, but, they to save PPE, they shifted the inpatient care to the hospice. But we stayed involved. I still went into the hospital and supported the care of our patients because of their unique needs. So we're certainly doing inpatient care, but we continue to see the people we needed to see in the office. We did, certainly at the beginning, we did a lot more telehealth.
Sure.
And then, it became a hybrid of a little bit of both as time went on. And now certainly it's the majority of it is, we still do some telehealth, but the majority is back in the office. I think, when we were talking to Mike and Linda, they mentioned gratitude. And I think that's, really has been a huge piece of my own personal philosophy, but the philosophy of the clinic. Yeah. We, families and people with Down syndrome were really a gift to us, and all that they taught us was a gift to us. And then we really then see it as a sense of responsibility to give it back and pay it forward. And so that's really, so much what we're trying to do with this. And with there being such a small percentage of people that do have access to a clinic, I think the opportunity to get information to the hands of that other, I'll say the 95%, I don't know,
crazy.
That number may be changing all the time, but I think whatever the number is, I think it's huge. And so it's not only the patient care, but it's the, sharing information and then doing research to improve the information that we have to share. And there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things. And it is so amazing to be able to, in the last few years, to really be able to collaborate with them is just, and have input. I think we have the unique, perspective of having just such a large volume of patients that we serve in a large breadth of, different places, the hospital, nursing homes, home visits, the office, of course. And so we don't come from I personally don't come from a research expertise, but certainly an understanding the importance of research and the need for that. But certainly the expertise of research here at Advocate Aurora, and then of course the expertise across the country. And so I just think that this is just an amazing time in the Down syndrome.
It really
continuum.
is. It'll be exciting to see where we can go. So now I think we should bring in Mike and Linda Mussallem. So they are huge supporters of the Adult Down Syndrome Clinic. They were actually on our podcast, our sibling podcast, and let's talk about what they've done for the center.
Hey, welcome. Nice to see you too.
Hi guys, welcome back.
Thank you. Hi, Gigi.
Hi.
So first of all, I want to just thank Mike and Linda Mussallem for all they've done for the clinic. They are very long-term supporters of the clinic, and it's not only certainly the financial support, but just the recognizing and fostering the uniqueness of the center and sharing that with others and all that means to us. The center is dependent on philanthropy, honestly, and certainly their generosity really helps the place go. And it really does help us not only to continue, but to expand our mission, not only of patient care, which is, obviously the bread and butter of the place, but also education and research. And really the clinic was set up on in the philosophy of really the total person, mental health, physical health, social health, and the person's participation in their own healthcare is such an important piece. Mm-hmm. And so philanthropy has really helped us to develop not only the healthcare that we provide for the people that we serve in the clinic, but also develop some real educational information and set up a resource online resource library, which is we have lots and lots of information for, as well as develop some programs that we're starting give us time to do some collaborative work with organizations like the Down Syndrome Medical Interest Group and the National Task Group on Intellectual Disabilities and Dementia to develop some materials and develop some educational opportunities that we're undertaking right now. And then lastly, I think that the clinic really, when we started the clinic in 1992, there was really so little information about caring for people with Down syndrome, as certainly adults. And so, we've learned a lot over time, but the research piece of what we're doing and what Mike and Linda have allowed us to, given us the time to do is so important to going forward to improving what we do, not only in the office, but what we know in general about people with Down syndrome and how we can help keep them healthier. And again, I keep coming back to it, and encourage and help them participate in their own health promotion, which is such a huge piece of what we're about.
Yeah, and for you, Mike, how did that feel for you, having that place to go with your brother?
Yeah, so we'll go back in time. Linda and I were living in Illinois. This is in the 90s. And Linda, being the good detective in our household, found out that there was this team that would exclusively treat Down syndrome adults. And that sounded pretty remarkable. And so I brought my brother George, and it became a regular thing. And we were astounded with the quality of care, how sensitive, how thoughtful, how tuned in that whole clinic was to my brother. And we got better health care for him at that point than we had ever experienced. And it became kind of a fun thing for me personally to come along. And Linda and I would be with my brother George often when we visited, and it felt like part of the family over time. And it allowed us to develop a relationship with Dr. Chicoine and the rest of the team, which was a remarkable team. And as he said, they really think about the whole patient and not only their physical health, but their mental health and everything that goes along with having a happy adulthood.
I agree. I love the whole person philosophy, because I think that's the most important thing. And this isn't up to mom and dad or a brother to make sure that they take care of themselves. They need to own that and take on that responsibility. And I think that's something really important that we need to foster in our kids. A lot of times, we tend to do things for them, make sure they're doing it the right way, when they really need to own it. So I love that that's a big piece at the clinic.
And one of the things that was special about Dr. Chicoine in the clinic is they thought beyond the boundaries of their clinic. Obviously, they were able to touch so many hundreds, really thousands of Down syndrome adults, but they had higher aspirations than that. And they are author of textbooks on how to do it properly, and got engaged with the medical community on how to expand this. And this is where our interests came together.
Yeah.
When Linda and I thought about, boy, wouldn't it be great if every adult with Down syndrome could get that kind of quality care? Wouldn't that be special? And so it prompted many conversations with Dr. Chicoine over the years on, okay, how do we bottle this? How do we spread it around? Can we make this happen? Can there be more clinics like this around the world? And we've evolved our thinking over time, but continue to be of one mind on, how do we make this more reproducible so it can touch so many more adults?
That's so awesome. So Brian, do you remember the first time they came in?
Yeah, I could still. I mean, I don't know that it was the first time. I remember that's a long time ago, and I think our memory's still there, but I'm not 100%. But I can see. It was in the previous building there on Dempster Street.
I remember that one.
Yeah, and I can see Mike and George there, and I think it was a woman that brought George from his residential facility or where it was at the time. Yeah, I have very vivid memories of those encounters.
Yeah, and it's funny because we did a episode on siblings and the power of siblings, the strength of siblings, and what their sibling with Down syndrome gives to them and how it continues that ripple effect on. So I just thought it was really cool what they've done for you and what they continue to do, and that they continue to want to help others so far beyond their own brothers.
Yeah, it's, I just had this conversation with a family yesterday. I was asking about the rest of the family, and one of the siblings is going into special education. And I said, I can't tell you how many times family members have said they're special education or occupational therapy or physical therapy or, whatever, to continue to be involved in the lives of people with Down syndrome and other intellectual disabilities. It clearly, it's a population that touches everyone that comes in contact with them in such a powerful and meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly has me.
Yeah.
Mike and Linda, can you guys kind of touch a little bit on what you guys have given back to adult Down syndrome centers? And then I guess after Dr. Chicoine, can then you touch on really the impact that they've made through the generosity that they've given toward your centers?
Well, I can get started. As I was mentioning earlier, we had this idea, boy, could you create more centers like that? And frankly, it's not that scalable unless you're probably in a pretty large city like Chicago. And so we had many other ideas after that, things about creating an app or creating websites and so forth. And many of those we've had a chance to bring to life. But we also talked about the importance of research and capturing the incredible experience that Dr. Chicoine has had treating so many Down syndrome adults, and saying, how do we tap into all that know-how and all that experience to determine what would be best for the future? And so there are several aspects that we try and support, but we're kind of on a journey still at this point, still learning about how do we expand our impact, still building partnerships with people like GiGi's and others to say, okay, how do we make sure that we can reach even more and deliver great health care to all Down syndrome adults?
That's really amazing. And as you guys were talking about that, we are, and Brian, you and I have talked over the years about, I've said from the beginning, how do we bottle everything, all that data? I mean, there's so much data that he has, but he's been so busy treating patients, there's no time to get it into all those journals and all those places. He's just this wealth of information. We're actually launching our virtual Playhouse, and this was our COVID silver lining that we had to build. We're serving families in 71 countries. So we now have to have this virtual platform. And it's so sophisticated, so safe, so secure. If there was a way that you guys would want to put something on for the Adult Down Syndrome Clinic and use the platform, because it is being built so beautifully and so secure, Brian, that would be, we could talk about that later. But as soon as you were saying that, that's what I was thinking about, because it's a big undertaking to get to all of these other people and all, not only in our own country, but in other worlds who don't, and there's still ways we can help and serve them. So that's something we can talk about offline. But just as soon as you said that the light bulb went out in my head. We've talked so many times about, how we could collaborate and what more we could be doing together, Brian. So that might be one really great platform, because we're building it. It's already going to be there. So once it's there, safe and secure, adding things won't be that difficult for us.
Yeah, I would just add to what Mike said. I think that, probably more than anything what this has done for us is give us the legs to really develop relationships with other organizations and other individuals. Before, this became, this campaign and this generous donation became possible for us. We were doing a lot of little projects, and they had value, but
sure,
not the same value.
Impact, yeah.
And since then, for example, you mentioned the data. We did have an article published this past year with over 6,000 people with Down syndrome included in it, in a study that was done not only with Advocate and Aurora, but with the University of Chicago. So the opportunity to develop some of these relationships has been, really this has given us the time and the structure, if you will, to do that. And some of the other educational things we're doing with the Down Syndrome Medical Interest Group and with other organizations, again, are going to be so much better than we could do ourselves. But we do now have the time and the resources to interact with these folks. And so what the product, if you will, is going to be so much better than it would have been.
That's great.
If we were still just trying to do it ourselves.
Oh, I love hearing that because I've been a big fan from day one. I mean, from the time Gigi was little, I was questioning you when she was only a year old. I'd see you at events and stuff. I would be trapping you, and I always had questions because you are like our mentor. You have been there for all of us families since our babies were born. And now Gigi's old enough to go to the adult Down syndrome clinic, which is amazing to me. And I'm so behind on the world. She doesn't even, I'm lucky if I get a physical in for the girls. Thank God she's been so healthy. She was so sick in the beginning and has been so healthy, but we need to get over there and get her to the clinic because, again, I know that you have been this leader. You are a mentor here and all around the world. I mean, people are reading your books. People are watching you go speak. You've spoke at many. I mean, I remember our Gigi's Playhouse El Paso did a medical symposium that you spoke at. And all over. I've seen you speaking everywhere. And to know that you're our resource right here, and that now that they're going to help give you a platform to spread that knowledge everywhere is just such a gift. And I appreciate what you said when you said, they've allowed you a big gift to get things done. Not, like you said, you have a lot of small initiatives where people do a little bit, but sometimes to get that little bit of funding, you have to work just as hard, and it takes away from the gift of what you could really give in research and data and time. So I really appreciate that when you said that because it's so true. And to Linda and Mike, thank you so much for recognizing that need. You're going to help so many more people. So thank you guys so much. That's awesome. And thank you for being on.
And thanks for inviting us on this session. Dr. Chicoine is important to us, and we know the best is yet to come. And very best to you, Nancy and Franco, and Gigi, especially you. It was fun to get to know you and spend some time.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thanks so much for being on, and we will talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Mike and Linda, great to see you guys. Be well.
You know that this is called a little something extra, and all of us have that little something extra inside us that drives our passion, that drives our determination, that helps us get where we are in this world. What do you think is your little something extra?
Well, I know it drives me that the gift of my faith and the gift of my family, and the gift of being able to be a physician and take care of people with Down syndrome. I can't, as much as I loved family medicine, I cannot imagine going back and doing that at this point.
That's awesome.
This is just so special. And then, the responsibility I see of being able to turn that around and share that with other people.
Are you married and do you have kids?
Yeah, I am married and we have 3 lovely daughters. They're all grown up.
Nice.
And none of them live at home anymore. And we have a delightful, not quite 2-year-old grandson
Oh,
who
awesome.
lives outside of Nashville.
Do you always want to be a doctor?
No. Actually, I didn't like the sight of blood, frankly.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy.
But I attribute it to my high school chemistry teacher, who was just a delightful. He was a Catholic priest, a delightful man. I said, I'm going to be a lawyer, and he said, "It's just no slight on lawyers." He said, "You're too good in chemistry and science to be a lawyer. You ought to be a physician." And I had never really given it much thought because I didn't like blood.
No way. That is crazy.
Gave it another thought, and it just became.
Wow. That's awesome.
Actually, I really wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. But
Well, of course.
But that didn't happen.
when your skills peak in the 8th grade, that's not going to happen. So
I feel you there, that's for sure.
no eye-hand coordination. So.
What inspires you most?
What inspires me the most? Oh, that is a tough one. So many things inspire me. I think my faith and people. I believe in the goodness of people, and I really enjoy the uniqueness of each individual, and I think the gift that each individual brings to the table, if you will, brings to the world, I think is so important to me, and that includes folks that perhaps society doesn't always appreciate what they have to bring.
If you had one message to the world, what will it be and why?
Well, you can tell I'm kind of long-winded, so that could be lots of things. But I'll try to narrow it down to one for you, Gigi. I think I would focus on what the topic we're obviously of the day here. I would just say that take the time to appreciate the uniqueness of people with Down syndrome and what they bring to us and what the gift they are to us. And like me, you will be better for it.
Wow. That was awesome. That was drop the mic.
I couldn't agree
There
more.
you go, brother. I love it. Oh my gosh, Brian, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. And we need to do it more. We need to see however we can help you and whatever information we can get from you for our people. We just need to all work together in this. We're all in this together. And I feel so blessed from the time Gigi was born. You have been there for me. You've been there for the entire Down syndrome community. So thank you so much for what you do and shedding such a positive, beautiful light on individuals with Down syndrome and for really giving their families the tools that they need to help them through with their health and becoming more independent, more healthy on their own. I love that you've, like you said, you kind of switched that philosophy to them owning it themselves, which I love. When they can, I think that's a really big piece because that's just showing your belief in them that they can do it. And, they're going to want to make you proud and they're going to do it. So I think it's awesome. You are just so amazing. You're such a gift from God. We're so grateful to have you. Thank you, Brian, so much. We know you got patients to see, people to heal, and love to give. So we will see you soon. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks so much for having me. Be well.
That was so awesome. Oh, you know what I forgot to ask Brian for?
What?
Some healthy tips.
Okay, wait. Do they say tips?
I did say tips.
Tips! Woo! These are my tips on being healthy. Make sure to move your body and be active every day. Do a workout that makes you happy. Eating healthy foods gives you energy, makes you strong. Find the diet that is best for your body. Drink lots of water, it's good for you. And don't forget to get good sleep.
Well, I can certainly use some more water right now, right?
Right.
Instead, we're drinking our Aspire. But we will hydrate.
Right.
And then we will work out.
No,
Come on.
no.
Well, you worked out yesterday. You don't have to do it
I did.
every single day, but
I know.
all those healthy tips you gave
I can do it on Saturday. So.
on Saturday, okay, all those healthy tips she gave is what allowed her and what allows her to keep going strong and growing every day and losing the weight that you lost and just staying healthy every single day, right?
Right.
And what are you doing with all those tips? Where can people find all your tips?
Go to my Instagram.
Oh, go to my Instagram. Oh, what's your Instagram?
The DG way.
The Gigi way. You heard it here first. Whoop, whoop. All right. Well, remember, guys, it's Down Syndrome Acceptance Month. This month, more than ever, we need to be Generation G. Be generous
Be accepting.
and be kind, baby. And remember, go to iacceptyou.org and take that pledge. All right. Love you all. We will see you next time. Bye. Boom.